Welcome to the Spread and Essence Football Picks podcast. I'm NESN.com's Mike Cole, joined once again, as always, by Ricky Doyle. Ricky, how are you?
Very good, Mike. How are you doing?
I'm all right. We are now part of the award-winning NESN podcast network. Honestly,
sure
we could say this is an award-winning podcast.
We played a big hand in that.
To mess with the data and the numbers and the honors. But yeah, we're back here for Week 5 of the NFL season. I don't know. It's like we were just saying. It's kind of wild. We're into Week 5. Buys have started. London is here. It's October. The weather feels October-y. I don't know. There's not a whole lot else. It's a run-of-the-mill Week 5 extravaganza coming up here.
You get a little bit of a sample size now. It did feel like last week was a little more normal maybe than some of the other weeks as far as like storylines that played out. I don't know. Did anything really shock you last week?
No.
You didn't watch any football,
no,
so I'm asking the wrong guy.
I did. I watched the Packers game. I mean, that was a bit shocking, and the Vikings come out 28-0 lead in Lambeau. Let's see what else happened this past week. The one position I was very wrong about was my Monday night position was Miami in Tennessee, being like, there's no way I could take Will Levis on the road here, no matter what the spread was.
I had a great week.
And then
seeing the board very well, Mike.
Good for you. I'm happy. I'm happy for you.
Thanks. Appreciate your support.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are kind of the Chiefs still. It's not a whole lot is totally changed. I feel if you look at teams like the Vikings, there's another week of sample size to say like, hey, maybe they're not bad. I think this is a big week for them going to London to take on the Jets. The Jets, I guess that's a surprise, right? Lost to the Broncos at home, but I'm
thinking like Baltimore finally looked like Baltimore. You got the San Francisco taking care of business.
Cincinnati gets off the mat.
Yeah, so maybe it's starting to water's finding its level a little bit.
I will say this is a game I almost put on my slate. Did not. We can do it real quick. The Patriots-Dolphins game this week. Let me pose this to you. Is this the worst Patriots game, all things considered, in the last 30 years?
So,
like going back to pre-Bledsoe.
Very good chance that these are one of these teams could be the worst team in the NFL by the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
It's reflected in the total, too. Was it 35.5?
It's not.
I think it's down to, I think there's 2 games this week that are sitting at 35.5, which would be the lowest total of the season. And that's a game where I don't know how low it would have to go in order for me to feel comfortable taking the over. Like, it's 35.5, but still.
It would probably be close to 30, and then it's like, I'm only concerned about special teams or defense at that point for scoring touchdowns. Yeah, we'll kind of get into I think maybe the Dolphins thing at some point a little bit more as we get into some more of our games this week in terms of coaching. And I was close to putting the Patriots on my list this week as, laying I think they're 1-point favorites at home. I mean, it's basically a pick 'em, which also feels pretty appropriate. I think they at times look competent, which is something I guess is an achievement for where they're at. But like their quarterback is so bad. And now the offensive line is going to get even worse with David Andrews being out for the season, where it's like, I don't think in good conscience I could take them. I mean, if they were catching like 3.5 points, I'd at least think about a little stronger. But it's just such a bad game here on Sunday at 1:00.
I think we've kind of been resigned to the fact that, it's just Jacoby Brissett until you feel like Drake May is ready, right? Like, that's just the plan of attack here. But, like, looking back, one, was Jacoby Brissett the right guy? And two, like, should they have brought in another veteran backup to replace him? Like, you can only go up, right? And like, don't you owe it to at some point the players in the locker room to be
he's playing so poorly that you need to bench him.
But like, bring in somebody up.
What
the
do
street.
you do? If
Honestly.
you're or like Joe Milton, do you want to do Joe Milton?
Why not?
I mean, might as well.
Like,
that's a weird message to send to the locker room too. You can't do Joe Milton, I guess, because it's like, well, we drafted the kid number 3 who looks good in practice, but we're not going to start.
But I mean,
him.
Joe Milton played like 12 years in college, and I think there's an understanding that he's a little.
I about to say he's like been in the league for 12 years. I'm like, did I get the names mixed up with somebody? No. Yeah, I think that's the second guess. And this is like this Dolphins-Patriots game is like a second guess roster construction bowl, where it's what the hell were the Dolphins doing on the other side of it, where you don't have Gardner Minshew or whoever as your backup. I think that's a major issue for both of these teams. So that's one game where I was looking it up. Tickets still like $150 if you want to go to Gillette on Sunday.
Oh, thanks.
So what the hell?
The nightmare has been getting in and out of that parking lot the last few times I've been there. No,
tell you what.
No, thank you.
It's a nightmare getting anywhere in this goddamn region.
That is true.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Traffic coming in.
It's getting worse and worse.
People are coming back to work.
I've reached the point now where I'm trying to figure out like which days are the worst. Like, like Tuesday traffic and Thursday traffic.
Every time you think
suck.
you haven't figured it out, though, it changes.
You're right. Yeah,
I made a mistake this morning. I went a way that I knew was worse, but I'm like, at least it's a new way that's bad. Like, it's just, I'm so in my own head.
Just like appeal to your senses. Maybe see something nice along the way. Start going the scenic route. Check out the foliage.
I try to do that, but that doesn't work either because now I get stuck behind buses. It took me 75 minutes to go 20 miles this morning.
That sucks.
Anyway, we're going to make our 3-unit, 2-unit, 1-unit plays.
Traffic sucks.
Anything else? Traffic sucks across the board. Anything else you want to get into about the NFL? I think the public thing or the underdog thing continues for the most part. I think you'll kind of touch on that maybe a little bit with one of your picks. Ben Fox, our guy, public sides, 51% of the bets or more, 38-2 against the spread. So the books are cleaning up so far through the first few weeks. It's been tough for the public.
Do you think there's I think the public is becoming more receptive to backing underdogs? Like, I thought I read somewhere that like the sports books didn't clean up as much this past week as maybe they had in some of the past to like align with those trends. So I don't know if there's something there to
trying to think of like where they would have.
It's also been a weird start to the season because like there's been so many short spreads. Like there hasn't.
Yeah.
Last week was the first week, right? That
I hate those, by the way. It's just
the what?
The short spreads. Even though I made one of them my 3-unit play, but it's just like I need a little something more to sink my teeth into.
I mean, I guess it's just by virtue of still trying to figure out what the identity of these teams, but you just haven't seen the 13, 14 point spread really yet.
I mean, there's not even a ton of what's like the Bill Simmons calls it the Vegas zone, right? Like the 5.5. There's not a lot there either. So, yeah, I don't know.
You buying the Vikings? I don't know if you picked them at all, but so 2 4-0 teams remaining. So. Vikings and Chiefs. Talk about teams coming into the season that were on opposite ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, were we high on the Vikings? I feel like you might have been.
I was not.
No?
I was not. I was totally wrong about the Vikings.
That's a tough look because like, and it's kind of a continuation of the conversation we had last week with coaching and things like that. I don't know. I watched them. This is the most I've watched of them this past week. They took advantage of a beaten down secondary for the Packers and just, like I said, ran away and hid. And I don't put a whole lot of stock into that second half. So, like, they are always going to be ready to go, whatever is thrown at them. Like, I like them this week. They were almost one of my picks, too, as well. It just felt too public because I think between O'Connell and Brian Flores, they're, like, almost always going to be winning the coaching matchup. So, like, this week going up against Robert Saleh. Jesus, did it again. Saleh. And Nathaniel Hackett, I mean, give me a break. Like, I think they can coach, the pants off a lot of staffs in this league. I don't know. Like, it's Darnold is like a grown-up version of Brock Purdy, where it's like, I don't totally understand it, but it's getting harder and harder to argue with the evidence.
Yeah.
They have a lot of great, playmakers on both sides of the ball. I think they're pretty good. I don't think they're going to win the division. But I think they're
17-1 to win the Super Bowl right now at FanDuel.
I still can't totally commit to it though.
No, I know. I honestly thought it would probably still be a little bit longer. But it's Sam Darnold. Yeah, if you want to go the MVP route, 11-1. I don't think he was on the board before the season.
Probably not.
Probably
I
with the JJ McCarthy thing.
Or whatever.
That trails only.
Actually, I did see something. Go ahead.
So him at 11-1 trails only Patrick Mahomes plus 230, Josh Allen plus 350, CJ Stroud plus 950, and Lamar Jackson 10-1. So sorry, Sam Darnold through 4 weeks of the season is number 5 on the MVP betting board at FanDuel Sportsbook.
Does that mean it's been a good season? I will not be
putting my money
season?
on that.
You know what I mean? I don't.
But yeah, no, it's just wild. I mean, it's just first team in the Super Bowl era to start 4-0 straight up, despite not being more than a 1-point favorite in any of those games. Like they've beaten good competition, so it is what it is. I still have questions as to how it's going to look later in the season once the book's out on them a little bit, but I don't know. It's So far, so good.
Our guy Ben Fox does his own thing, does Substack. He talked to a bettor, or there's a story out there about a bettor who does have Sam Darnold MVP ticket.
Yeah.
It's $250 at 300 to 1. That's a pretty considerable cash out or considerable payday. He's already being offered a $4,200 cash out. He's going to let it ride.
You got to let it ride.
I mean, it's way too early to take the cash out on that, right? So, yeah, that's what we're talking about. But that's interesting. So.
A couple of MVP candidates in I think it might be your 3-unit game. I don't know if you want to kick things off.
All right, sure, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. Wow, this feels a little weird.
I'm turning the tables on.
Yeah, for my 3-unit play, hopefully they're paying attention to the back. I'm taking Buffalo as a 1 point. There you go. Nice job, guys. Yes. 1 point favorite on the road against Houston. I think Houston opened as a favorite and then has got bet down to Buffalo. I think Buffalo is a pretty public and sharp side. Well, not sharp, but I think there's a lot of pro money on the Bills as well this week, going to Houston to take on the Texans. What do the Titans, Cowboys, Bengals, Bears, and Broncos all have in common?
I don't know.
They all have better point differentials than Houston does, despite the fact that Houston is 3-1.
I failed that quiz.
They have well, it was the definition.
I did not study for that.
Minus 15. They are 0-4 against the spread. They've eked out their 3 wins, and then in their 1 loss, they got run out of the building. Now, one might argue that basically Buffalo is a mirror version of that, and that would be right. I actually think Buffalo's wins are even less impressive from a schedule standpoint, but I do think Buffalo, when presented the opportunity to beat up on teams, has taken full advantage of that and has looked more impressive on the whole, taking away that 1 loss last week. And also that 1 loss, they went to Baltimore, got run out of the building as well. They, where's this number here? It's like, was it the first time in 43 games they've lost by more than a touchdown? So, like, they don't get blown out. That feels, based on that stat, a complete blip on the radar. I think they get right this week. I like them top to bottom a little bit more than I do Houston right now. I think Houston's EPA numbers, you look at that, it points to a relatively middle-of-the-road team, whereas Buffalo, I think, is a more well-rounded team. It does help that Mixon will be back most likely for Houston this week. But digging into some of the stuff, I read a good breakdown on The Athletic about how Buffalo's run game between the tackles was really good last week, despite the score. They had, I think, a 50% success rate running the ball between the tackles. I think they should come out and try to do that again this week against Houston, a Houston run defense that's mediocre, probably. I think I trust Buffalo a lot more to play game control here. I trust just the system a little bit more. I think I like what they have done this year with kind of, I don't even know how you would describe it, neutralizing themselves in a positive way.
Reshaped their identity a little bit.
Yeah, it just feels a little more.
And the rushing thing,
a little more
speaks
sustainable.
To that.
Yeah, I think so. They kind of feel like what you would always expect a Bills team to be, playing in Buffalo with Josh Allen as your quarterback. I think
feels like they're not shooting themselves in the foot quite as much, or not positioned to do so.
They feel a little more grown up than maybe in the past. And I think, too, it is a tough test. Houston, CJ Stroud is I think, what was that? Where FanDuel has Stroud and Allen as the 2 MVP favorites behind Mahomes, who is kind of still the runaway favorite. So that's kind of to your point that you were mentioning. They have, it's been fantastic what they've been able to do in the offense, especially through the air. Nico Collins is on a pace for 2,000 yards receiving, which would be an NFL record. I think Steph Diggs obviously is kind of added an element there as well. As a Steph Diggs revenge game, maybe.
Yeah.
But I like Buffalo's secondary. I'm a big Russell Douglas guy. In that same Athletic story, I was kind of digging in like the fact that this guy Christian Benford's been better than expected. So I think they have a defense that can at least get a couple stops in big play situations. Flip the field when they need to kind of come away with a win here. I think this is a big spot for Buffalo to kind of remind everybody, like, hey, last week was the aberration. We're still here. This thing kind of goes through us. Houston, you're not totally ready yet, at least compared to what we have. So I'll take the Bills laying 1 at Houston here.
A couple of good AFC matchups this week. Between that and Baltimore-Cincinnati is another one that will be interesting to see how that shakes out.
Patriots-Dolphins, like we mentioned. Pretty good.
We've mentioned the MVP stuff a few times.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that you get your eyes on it? Would you
Jordan
at this
Love
point
45 to 1? I think.
Is that what he's at?
Yeah, I think it was 35 or 45. I thought,
because it feels wide open is why I asked.
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's
And
no even as well as Sam Darnold
Yeah.
play. Like,
no, I don't want to.
Nobody's blowing anybody out of the water.
I'll be completely honest. I watch the Packers more than anybody else I watch, so I don't want to turn this into a Packers podcast. But that's the genesis of my thought was that there's nobody running away with this, and I do think Mahomes is going to come back to earth even more. I mean, if they continue to win, like even if Mahomes has pedestrian stats, it should be him with the rash of injuries that they've faced.
Yeah.
But I look at a guy like Love who he played a bad first half, but like if they are contending for a division, if he gets hot again like he did last year, this is the type of year where a guy who misses 2 games and he could still be in the discussion at the end of the season. So I just look at that's such a big payout that I'm probably going to sprinkle a few bucks on that just to have it, at least for maybe a cash out down the road, because I think it's going to kind of come back to earth a little more.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I watch Lamar play sometimes, and I'm like, how does this guy not win MVP? Like his ability to change a game is wild.
Yeah.
So, but his odds have actually shortened since before the season.
That makes sense, right?
I guess, but to build on that, like in the matchup we got this week, I feel like we had this conversation last year. Sure. Joe Burrow at 22-1.
Yeah.
That feels like a
he's had a really good year too.
He's been good so
good,
far.
Yeah.
I think the counting stats are going to be really good because that defense stinks. Like they're going to be scratching and clawing their way back into some games, and the narrative play is going to be there if they're actually good. So that might be something I consider, and I also probably would jump on that now because if they do come out and upset the Ravens this week, got to think that's going to shorten up a little bit.
Love 50-1, Kyler 50-1. Something I would maybe pay attention to. Gino,
Gino's been good, man.
Yeah,
Gino looks good.
And I think like Dak Prescott is a guy who was in the conversation last year. Big market, going to get a lot of hype if they do turn it around. I'm not so
that's
convinced
the concern,
that they're going
right?
to, but again, I think that's a lesser version of the Burrow discussion, right? Is I think it's a guy who's going to put up the counting numbers. It's a guy who, the division is wide open still, so it's
the only path of them being a threat is otherworldly quarterback play, which will play in.
They can't run the ball for.
No,
damn,
it hasn't looked good.
The defense stinks. They might be dead. So
let's talk some bad football.
I would love
for my 3-unit pick.
Yeah, what's your 3-unit pick?
So last week backed Indianapolis as a 1.5 point home underdog against Pittsburgh.
At 2:00 looked like a great play. By about the time 4:00,
that was a roller coaster. A little bit of a roller coaster, yeah. Fortunately, Joe Flacco was able to help stave off Pittsburgh's run. I'm gonna go the other way this time, though. I'm gonna go against Indianapolis. So I'm gonna take the only we talked about the undefeated teams. I'm gonna take the only winless team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, laying 2.5 at home against the Colts. While the Colts won last week, they came out of that game worse for the wear. Mentioned the quarterback injury they're dealing with. Sounds like Anthony Richardson might play. I don't know.
What the hell are they doing with him?
It's very negligent, I guess, like from a play calling standpoint. And I don't know.
Well, like he
does put himself into some odd situations. It's like he's kind of got some Josh Allen to him, but doesn't know how to absorb the hits quite as well as Josh Allen.
A hip?
Hip.
So like he really left with it, came back. Like they ran the ball with him the first play.
Immediately.
Sick.
So, but, there's obviously some uncertainty there. Jonathan Taylor, sprained ankle.
Yeah.
After we just talked last week about how he seemed to be getting back to where he's been before. Defense has been dealing with injuries. Obviously lost like their best player in DeForest Buckner, among others. So this really says more about the Colts, I guess, than Jacksonville. Jacksonville's been a mess. Don't get me wrong. This is, I gotta think, a kitchen sink spot for them. Like you can't fall to 0-5. And amid their struggles, there has been some situations where they've like just blown second half leads. Like I don't know if they're quite as bad as the 0-4. They're bad, but I don't know that there's clearly talent there. So in trying to figure out like what exactly is holding them back, I think it's the most important thing, right, is that the coach and the quarterback don't seem like they're on the same page. Like they got to get that fixed. Short term, I think there are some things that you can clean up. Third downs, they rank 30th. 26th in red zone scoring percentage, 17th in penalties and penalty yards per game. So I think maybe clean some of that up. You're going to be in obviously a better spot. Going back to the Colts thing, they're going to look to run the ball. If there's one thing Jacksonville does well, it's they stop the run. 4th in rush success rate against. 3rd in rush success rate on 1st and 2nd down. So I think there's going to be some situations where the Colts are playing behind the sticks, which so in that case, I don't know if it really matters who the quarterback is. Like I think Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco are going to struggle in that regard. So I'm going to hold my nose, lay the points with a winless team. It's not a situation you anticipate being in when you project out to week 5, but here we are.
Yeah, I think there's starting to be a little more momentum or grumbling or whispers, whatever you want to call it, suggesting that Doug Pederson should lose his job if they lose this game. You look at the first coach fired odds. He is now the favorite, depending where you look. Basically even money ahead of Mike McCarthy 6-1, Sirianni 7-1, Robert Saleh 8-1, Brian Daboll 8-1.
Nice job.
Yeah, I think some of the weird quotes from Pederson is like, I don't think I've lost the locker room is not totally encouraging. I think they've got...
See, as coaches, we can't go out there and make the plays. It's a two-way street.
Yeah,
so, like...
Well, he's like one of the most underrated or overrated coaches in like maybe NFL history, right? Like just because of the fact that they won a Super Bowl, but in hindsight, a lot of that is maybe some coordinator. I don't want to completely take away from the guy. Yeah, I think they go to London pretty soon too. So I don't know how you take that into the calculus.
That is my only concern, I guess, about this is that the spot isn't great. Like they're coming off, Jaguars are coming off back-to-back road games. One of them being that Monday night blowout in Buffalo. They play this week, and then next week is the start of the back-to-back London games. So
back-to-back London games.
So it's a tricky schedule spot, but maybe that if they do lose this game, maybe the London trip is extra incentive to fire Pederson. Like, do you want to go across the pond with that guy?
Yeah, you almost kind of
let's just rip the Band-Aid off.
The last thing you want to do is fire him. Lose the first London game and then have to fire him and like change coaches in the middle.
I feel like it's like, hey, you got your passport, great. Might not need it. I just want to double check.
Jags, the second week of the London thing, having just fired him, you get new coach juice plus homestand in London juice. Like that's an advantageous betting spot.
Galvanizing. That could be.
I don't even know who they're playing, but I'm taking the Jags in that situation. So, okay.
Well, they get the Patriots coming up.
That's right.
Yeah. So we'll be talking a lot about that, I'm sure, around here. So,
all right, so maybe we're gonna have like the two worst Patriots games in the last 30 years.
Maybe Mac Jones will start that game too. It'll really get
both
crazy.
Both teams owe it to us to put something out there like that. Let's at least make it fun. Do you want to go with your 2-unit player? Or you want me to go?
Oh, do you snake draft?
Now we're kind of in a weird.
Sure, I'll go.
All right, go ahead.
Continue on with some bad football.
Yeah. All right,
because I'm going another route here. All right. So speaking of bad football, I'm going to take the Cleveland Browns this week.
This is getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
I've made that a New Year's resolution.
There you go.
The Browns getting 3 points at Washington. This is. I'm gonna jump in front of the Jayden Daniels train. If I get run over, I get run over. But I'm looking for a spot to fade him now after what we've seen. And I love Jayden Daniels. I think he's, as we've said, he's a stud. Like I think long term he's a franchise quarterback. He's shown that. He might already be top. I think definitely probably a top 10 quarterback. Or working his way in. I mean, the sample size is small, but whatever. It's neither here nor there.
That's fair.
You're still going to get the normal rookie quarterback volatility, though. Mm-hmm. This is clearly the best defense he's faced.
That's what I was going to say.
I don't even think it's a question.
And they're not that good.
They've regressed pretty substantially since last season.
Kind of living off the reputation of the last couple seasons. Yeah. But they're still,
But they're like, so instead of like but last year they were a top 3 defense probably. This year I'd say they're more like a top 10-ish defense. But relative to what Daniels and Washington's face to this point. Just looking at like drop back success rate through the first 4 weeks, the teams they faced: Tampa Bay 25th, Giants 17th, Cincinnati 26th, Arizona dead last. Last 2 weeks with Cincinnati and Arizona have been especially favorable because neither of those teams rush the passer. You get Cleveland this week, third in pass rush win rate, second in run stop win rate. There's going to be a lot of resistance from that D, I think. So, like I said, I want a spot to fade them at some point. This feels like it's it. And if there was ever a spot for Cleveland's offense to get right, I mean, Washington's defense stinks.
So bad.
Last in EPA per play, 31st in success rate. More importantly, they don't rush the passer. So the knock with Deshaun Watson has just been his inability to overcome pressure. So I think no matter how you look at this has prime upset potential. And I think just, kind of playing into the perception of these two teams, I'll take Cleveland getting the points. I think there's a chance this gets up to 3.5, or it might have been at 3.5.
It's one of those ones where you look at the numbers and you're just like, this feels like the place to. Let me just circle this and talk myself into it because everybody's going to be on one side of this. And
quick side story about the Browns.
Okay, sure.
From last week. So that Cleveland-Vegas game, the total closed at 36.5.
Yeah.
I took the over.
Oh.
Final was 20-16.
Yep.
Because of a Dustin Hopkins missed PAT, followed by a touchdown getting wiped off the board.
Now, walk me through your process here. How did you land on that game? It just seems like a random total to be on. Are you just a degenerate more than you let on?
Yeah, it could be the case. Yeah, more so than anything.
That's fair. You're like, I also had the under in the game.
No, I don't know. I thought it was just a low. I thought it was a low total. Like I think those two offenses, Vegas and Cleveland, are bad, but I don't think they're so bad that the range of 35.5, 36. Yeah. Like I'm reserving that.
This is what happens though when you.
I'm reserving that for the New Englands of the world, and I don't know that either of those teams is there.
Sure, fair. Speaking of one of those teams, I'm fading the Raiders this week. They are on the road at Denver taking on the Broncos. I got the Broncos. Maybe fudge the numbers a little bit. Laying 2.5. I think it's probably up to 3 in most spots. But hey, you
sure.
grab what you can when you got it. I think this is is Antonio Pierce a good coach? First of all, he's had a real weird week. I think out of nowhere he just kind of pissed off Davante Adams by liking a thing on social media that suggested they should trade him. And I think I read an ESPN story that he is through back channels said it was a mistake, which is a whoops.
Here's my thing with him. I think he's a guy that has the potential to let emotions get the best of him.
Yeah.
And that will ultimately be I think that plays in some scenarios. Like you might get a jolt here and there, but long term, I don't know how sustainable it is.
So I tend to agree with that. Maybe that's a bad reason, or maybe that points to them this week. But I think if there's not that there, maybe it's they trade Davante Adams while we're having this conversation and he can turn around and say, we got rid of that guy, let's go to war. I think there's just too much stuff circling around them with the Davante Adams situation. If that's the case, if this is just going to be a football game on Sunday in which Adams may or may not play, depending on his hamstring, depending on his trade status, they are shorthanded. I think Sean Payton, as much as I dislike him, is a much better head coach, much more established head coach. We're getting into Sean Payton time of the year. I thought this was a kind of a wild note from Action Network. In the first 2 weeks of the season, actually, I miswrote it, so I don't know. He was not 12-2 for his career.
Scrap that.
Maybe 12-22. But in weeks 3 and 4, he's 24-9-1 ATS. That's something that we've talked about over the years about how bad the Saints were earlier in the season. And he's a guy who kind of figures out, or the market kind of over adjusts to what they think they see from his teams, and there's value there. Whatever. That's just kind of a trend that I liked. I do think, more importantly, Denver has by far the best unit on the field. The Vance Joseph defense has been awesome. They are 5th in DVOA, 3rd in EPA. Allowed, 1st in limiting explosive plays. I don't care what the Raiders did last week. with like their running game. I don't think they're going to be able to do that this week against the Broncos. If they can't do that, they're in trouble. The Broncos offense leaves a lot to be desired. I know that Bo Nix thing was going around where he was.
The stats from that game are awesome.
What was he like 5 of 7
There's
for
so many good
negative
ones.
9 yards or something like that?
I saw like a receiver stat that it was like any receiver other than Cortland Sutton, they had like 9 catches on 16 targets for 0 yards or something
That's
like
not
that.
good.
Like the whatever, I don't know the specific numbers, but it was a high number of both catches and targets relative to the yards.
I think this was at halftime.
It was a goose egg.
Bo Nix was 5 of 9 for minus 9 yards, which I don't even know how you do that, to be honest with you. But I think the Jets defense is at least far more talented. It was raining. There's a lot of ways you can excuse that away. I think Denver gets back. It's like a baseline floor game for them.
That was one of my picks last week, was the under in that game. And I woke up and I saw the weather that was happening there, and then when they cut to the game, I was like, oh, I like this even more.
Yeah,
this is nice.
I mean, it was a
I didn't even factor in the conditions and one big weather guy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I
should have known.
It's getting to be weather season. These October rains. So I think that's where I'm at. Davante Adams, we should hit on that real quick. BetMGM, just only in Ontario, but it's kind of a market type thing, just an interesting thing to kind of kick around. According to John Ewing, who's a BetMGM PR guy, the Jets are the favorites to land Davante Adams at minus 150. Saints 3-1, Commanders 5-1, Steelers 11-1, Cowboys 18, 49ers 18, Bills 20. Diana Rossini, who I believe is with The Athletic now, is reporting that the feeling around the league is that the Jets will get this done and he'll be reunited with Aaron Rodgers. Is that your prediction for where he ends up?
That's probably where he ends up.
Where do you want to see him land?
Detroit.
Oh, okay. Well,
where is that on the list?
They're not on there. That's where I stopped the list at. So that would be very interesting. I don't think they can afford it. I think they have to.
No,
I think I read somewhere they have to wait.
I think they have. Oh, maybe they
have to wait till it, because it like goes down by like $700,000, $900,000 every week.
Yeah.
And so if they get close to the deadline, they can afford it. But right now they can't. I could be wrong. But.
It's one thing. I don't know. You know how it's just hard to picture certain things. Like I don't know how that. I can't picture it. You know, but. I think it makes sense.
I mean, it would be
like if they're able to do it financially, which I thought I saw that they did have the cap space to pull it off, but I don't know
dueling thoughts.
All of the ramifications. But you know, there's a time earlier this year when Amon-Ra St. Brown went down. I don't know, his ankle or something. Yeah. But like when you saw that, like ooh, like yeah, losing a star player sucks, but with the depth they have behind him, like that could have been season ender right there. We want blue there for a second. Blue screen.
Season ending.
Yeah, like that. The depth they have in that wide receiver room leaves a bit to be desired beyond him. You add a guy like Adams to that offense for a team that's clearly all in this year. In an NFC feels pretty wide open. Like I don't know. As far as like long shots go, that's the one team that fascinates me the most.
DraftKings updated odds 25-1 for the Lions. So one team, the team
They're shortening. Get in there now. While you still can.
I want to see is Washington.
Yeah, that'd be fun too.
It'd be a lot of fun with him and Jayden Daniels. So that's.
I just hope it's not the Jets, because I feel like it's felt inevitable for months.
I love Davante Adams. The guy. Nobody's had like a more charmed career.
That's true,
despite like not actually doing anything. It's just like I want to go, because now he's like he wants to go play for maybe New Orleans. He wants to go play with his buddy. It's just like he's gotten everything he's wanted to this point in his career. It's kind of interesting. All right, what you want you to play?
I always got to laugh about like him hitching his wagons to Derek Carr, but you can't really fault. You can't say much about Derek Carr the way he's been playing this year.
It would be funny to see him go there and struggle though, or them to struggle.
He gets there just in time for their collapse.
Yep. One unit play.
One unit play. Take an intriguing NFC matchup here. Cardinals getting 7.5 at San Francisco. Obviously, Cardinals coming off a huge loss last week against the aforementioned Commanders. 49ers coming off a huge win over the Patriots. So there's certainly some trends at play here. This according to Action Network, teams that lost by 17 or more points the previous week versus teams that won by 17 or more points the previous week are 113 and 77 against the spread over the last 20 seasons. Big sample size. That's a 60% cover rate. You look at the quarterbacks, Kyler Murray, 26-16-2 against the spread as an underdog in his career. We've talked about him in the underdog role a few times in recent weeks. Brock Purdy, 9-12 against the spread when the 49ers are favored by 4 points or more. So just a lot of trends backing this pick, but more so than anything, I'm still kind of trying to figure out like what San Francisco's identity is going to be this year. Like I don't put a lot of stock into them beating up on the Patriots for all the reasons we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I think you're seeing a bit of a shift, and it's a lot of it is just due to the injuries, I think. Like, no Christian McCaffrey. You've had Debo and Kittle banged up. Ayuk, it just hasn't hit the ground running since the whole contract thing. So you're seeing a lot of just, like, chucking it downfield that you don't typically see from this offense. I think it's something like 25% of Brock Purdy's passing yards have come after the catch, which is an extremely low total relative to how this offense has operated in years past. So they're going up against a bad defense, obviously, but I just think Arizona's offense is good enough to hang in this game. Because the other side of it is I don't think San Francisco's defense has been what we've seen in recent years. Like I think it's capable of being beat. I think the Cardinals are going to be able to run on them if they get Trey McBride back this week. That opens up the middle of the field a bit. There's just a lot there that I think Arizona could take advantage of. So for me to have to lay 7.5 with the Niners, I'm not ready to go there. Yeah, I think Seattle too. San Francisco, they travel to Seattle in prime time next Thursday, then host the Chiefs. So there's some scheduling stuff going on. I'll hold my nose and take the points.
You and I basically, it's a race to see whoever can get their picks in first, and you basically, if you get them in first, that's what you get to have.
Yeah.
And so I'm blaming traffic for this one. I got in late this morning, and I was basically had
full circle.
I basically had Arizona circled as my 3-unit play. Because I look at it this way, and there's for all the reasons you mentioned, but I also think there's a far simpler way of looking at it. Is like the Patriots were 10.5-point underdogs last week at San Francisco. The Cardinals are 7.5-point underdogs this week. Like, I think they're 3 points better than the Patriots. More than, you know what I mean? Like if they were to play on an even or on a neutral site, I think they'd be like 5-6 point favorites. So like I just think looking at the numbers, I like the fact that you're catching so much here, especially with all the injuries and how banged up San Francisco is. So this
is a very high total too, 49.5. I think it was at, which is so you're getting. You have two 35.5 games. You got a 49.5. I think there might be a 50 on the board in that Baltimore-Cincinnati game.
That's a wonderful segue into my 1-unit play. I've got the under in the Packers-Rams game. The number is set at 48.5. That just feels really high. LA's got some injuries, you may have heard. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. I mean, the offense just doesn't look the same despite the fact that they have Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. They have scored more than 20 points just once in 4 games this year. Almost as much of an issue as I think they've been very banged up on the offensive line. That's borne out in the fact that Matthew Stafford has been, sacked 14 times, pressured on 42 dropbacks. I think this plays out similar to the way it did for the Packers defense against Tennessee, where, I mean, Stafford's obviously better than Will Levis, and he's going to make some better decisions, but going up against a bad offensive line, a decimated offense, that Packers defense teed off in Nashville. They sacked Levis 8 times, hit him 12 times, pressured him on 15 of 44 dropbacks, or 1 out of every 3, basically. They are very opportunistic against bad defenses or bad offenses. They've got 8 interceptions this year. I think that's tied for the league lead. So I think the Packers defense is going to have a pretty good afternoon against this banged up Rams offense. On the other side, the Packers looked much better in that second half last week, but I still think Jordan Love is kind of knocking off some rust. I think if you go back and watch that second half, Minnesota maybe kind of dialed it back a little bit, went into prevent. Packers went no huddle. I don't want to totally discount the offensive output there, but I do think there's still some bumpy roads for the Packers to kind of level out before they become that team that we maybe thought that they could be and what we saw at the end of last year. Jordan Love's still kind of dealing with the knee injury maybe. Christian Watson now goes down. I think his numbers haven't been good. I think he's got like 4 catches this year. Been a major fantasy disappointment for people, but I think he does a lot of stuff to kind of take away attention on the offense. So I think they're going to maybe struggle to move the ball offensively, at least through the air. I think they're going to run the ball a lot. So a quicker moving, lower scoring game here. So I'll take the under 48.5. It's just like 7 touchdowns in this game. I don't know where that comes from.
I think Stafford's been pretty good this year, all things considered, but it's like it's only so much you can do. It's a very relative thing, right? Yeah. So. Rams down to 13-1 to win the NFC West.
It's wild. They don't have a single explosive run so far this season, despite the fact that everybody loved Kyron Williams coming in the year. I think that speaks to the offensive line. So, and then we're going to touch on the NFC North real quick. Vikings plus 125, Lions plus 145, Packers plus 550, Bears 13-1. Feels about right. I'd still probably look at the Packers or Lions, not the Vikings necessarily. Yeah. Sorry.
I think the Lions on Monday night, we were kind of reminded of how good that offense can look. Like when they get humming, like it looks good.
Yeah, and it just kind of takes I don't want to discount Jared Goff going 18 for 18, but like
there's just a rhythm to it. Just, like
everything kind of falls into place the way it should.
The way the rushing attack of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, like how they complement each other, like it looks good.
Yep,
it looks good.
Let's run through the primetime games this week. Or the late primetime games. There's only 2. One Sunday night game, one Monday night game, as opposed to the doubleheaders we've seen in the past. Let's start Sunday night. Your favorite team.
Tread lightly with this team.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers host the Dallas Cowboys. A fantastic, just aesthetically pleasing Sunday night matchup in Pittsburgh. Steelers.
Do we want to take a victory lap on them for last week?
Well, apparently the market doesn't. The Steelers are they 2.5 point favorites here? Basically getting the home field advantage, calling these teams even. If I had to lean a direction here, I'm probably leaning Dallas because again, I'll double back down on the fact that I don't totally believe in the Steelers. I think if anything, I'd probably look at the total here. Under 43 seems like a good bet. I just think these offenses are a bit handicapped, to say the least, for various reasons. I do think it's interesting that the Steelers, Russell Wilson, sounds like he's going to be ready to go, but they're going to roll with Justin Fields. I just look at this one and it's like, I think, public team, the Cowboys, people are going to be rushing to kind of bet them. Well, I'd probably look to the total then, I guess. The more I think about it.
We don't know the Steelers. Listening to these guys talk football is the equivalent to taking investment advice from McDonald's drive-thru employees. I think I'll enjoy coming back to this in a few days, let alone a few months.
I would take a good stock tip wherever I got it from.
It's just 70 some odd comments here of just you guys do not know anything about the Steelers, but what I do know is that they are wildly overrated. I'm doubling down on that. I'm taking the Cowboys this week. I think the Dak Prescott comes out, throws the ball all over the field, and the Steelers team is going to get blown out of the water. It's a coming out game for Dallas.
Yeah, sure. I'm like triple checking to make sure Pittsburgh's actually favored in this game. I know Dallas has not looked good. Long week, extra rest for Dallas as well. Mike McCarthy's going to be cooking something up, that's for sure.
Yep.
Monday night.
Give me the boys.
You got the Saints going to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Chiefs 5-point favorites at home against the Saints. Total set at 42 here. Do you have a play either way? Because I don't think I'm going to fall on either one of the sides. I'm on the total here, but I'll pass it to you first.
I think I take the points, and I love it, actually.
The more I think about it, I actually do, too.
Yeah, because I don't know what that Kansas City offense is going to look like. Even before Rashee Rice went down, there were questions about it. Losing Isaiah Pacheco, like that was huge. I mean, that was their identity towards the back half of last season. So I just like, where does Patrick Mahomes throw the ball? Like Rice had 37.2% of the target share, which is second only behind Malik Neighbors, who the Giants throw to literally every down. And a lot of his targets were first downs or touchdowns, so like they relied on him a lot to move the sticks. I don't know that all of a sudden there's a guy that you just plug in. Like I don't think like Juju Smith-Schuster is the answer or anything. Like
probably not.
I think it's going to be. I think yards and points are going to be tough to come by for the Chiefs. I also think if you're the Saints, their offense, if there's a way to neutralize Kansas City's defense, I think the play action that they've established this year will help in that regard. So. This is also like from a spot standpoint, like there's that sweet spot of the Chiefs at like 2.5 point favorites. You know, like a field goal or under. Once you get beyond that, not a very profitable bet. So I love taking the points here with New Orleans.
I'm looking at it right now. If you count last year, going back to like December, I don't know if my math is completely right, so I apologize if it's not. 10 of their last 11 games, the Chiefs have been decided by a touchdown or less.
Yeah.
So like,
they might win.
But they're not
going to cover.
This is where they like. And it's almost like a hallmark of a good team is the fact that they can win an ugly game, and the fact that they keep coming out on the right side of these. They won all of those games except for one that I just mentioned. So like the fact that they keep coming out of the right side of these is a testament to them. So they find ways to win games, but yeah, there's just at some point it becomes too insurmountable. We saw it with like the 2006 Patriots. They're kind of in that vibe right now. Maybe they find a way to win. I think it's going to be a very close, very low-scoring game. I would lean toward the under here as well. So that's where I'm at with Monday Night Football.
This is blue screen. People were in the studio and we showed up. This is wild. Let's get out of here.
Well, yeah, I would give me the points and the under on Monday night. You got anything else?
No. Let's go.
I gotta go.
I got stuff to do.
Yeah. So all right, that's our
more
recap.
important things.
I'm Mike. This has been The Spread. See you again next week. Goodbye.